the past, there was a presupposition that ghosts were individuals that used to be human, but there has been a shift in the past decades. Science has a lot to do with this shift. As people have looked more and more to science for answers, the belief in ghosts has diminished. Even those who still believe in ghosts are skeptical of sightings. Believability has therefore become linked with respect and power when it comes to paranormal activity. When ghosts are perceived as being fake or useful only for entertainment, there is no concrete reason to give them respect. In conclusion, ghosts are represented differently in terms of impersonalization and personalization, individualization and collectivization, and honorifics and objectification in the 20th century as opposed to the 21st century. The 1900s through the 1960s used personalization, individualization, and honorifics to humanize the ghosts. They do this by portraying the ghosts as specific, dynamic people, and using the word ghost as a title of authority. This gives the ghosts individual power, agency, and will, as well as a level of respect and authority. The past did this because there was a presupposition that ghosts were real and once human. In contrast, people in the 2000s rely more heavily on science and are skeptical to humanize and respect what isn't proved to be real. Present-day articles use impersonalization, collectivization, and objectification to diminish the ghost's power over the living. They do this by portraying ghosts as a mass of hauntings void of their previous humanity, and by reducing the ghosts to objects and the objects they control. This reduces ghosts to a form of entertainment and fascination, rather than giving them any power or agency.
A final thing to consider when looking at these ghost stories is the way verbs are being used. Two types are verb processes and quoting verbs, which analyze the discourse around paranormal experiences. When looking at the articles from the past, one can see the subject of paranormal experiences are taken more seriously. Verbs are being used in many different ways. Verb process is simply the study of people who are depicted as doing and refers broadly to who does what to whom and how. This allows us to reveal who plays an important role in the particular clause and who receives the consequences of the action. Quoting verbs are similar in that matter, for you get a hint of what the author is trying to convey about the speaker by choosing how to end the quote. In the article, written in 1953, Patrice tells the writer about Italian ghosts. He uses material and mental verb processes. The most common verbs used are see, saw, and believe, which are mental verbs. Mental verb processes are the process of sensing. This gives a way of knowing the feelings or state of mind of a participant. This process has three classes: cognition, verbs of understanding and clarifying; affection, emotions, love, like, and hate; and perception, which is the sensing, like listened. This seeing and believing was mostly done by Patrice and her husband. The ghost did most of the material verbs. Material verb processes are the doing process, where there is a result due to the action. This process needs to have an actor, something performing the action, and a goal, so a participant at who the process is directed. Material processes may have one or more participants. If it's just one participant, it's the actor. Although the ghost is doing the actions in this article, we don't know much about the ghost itself, and we read more about the experiences of Patrice and her husband. And quoting verbs in this article show that the author believes what Patrice and her husband are saying. For example, the quoting verb in this article, there's a quote in the second paragraph.
"We don't talk to most people for fear they'll have us locked up," the husband explained.
Using the word explain and then using the word continued later on gives the more assertive tone. These are metapropositional verbs, which are verbs that mark the author's interpretation of the speaker. The author lets them explain what's happening rather than putting it into his own words. This gives the speaker more power over the story. If the author disagrees with what they're saying, he would put it in his own words. Normal persons sometimes have strange experiences is an article also from the past. It is a bit different. Here in this article we see mostly material verbs and verbal verb processes. Verbal processes use to be verbs. There are three classifications: sayer, human or human-like speaker; receiver, the one the verbal process is directed; and verbiage, a normalized statement. The verbs are mostly used by the living, and we don't see the ghost doing as much of material verbs. We mostly hear the words paranormal experiences, which isn't necessarily referring to ghosts itself. In fact, the verb experience is used most often in this article. Experience is a material verb process. There aren't quite as many quoting verbs in this article called Winona, Minnesota Ghost Sightings. This is due to the fact that there are hardly any quotes. The only quotes are from a woman's paranormal dream that came true. Here they have quoting verbs said, call, and asked. Said and asked are neutral structuring verbs, which don't carry any meaning and makes it seem impersonal, whereas called is a descriptive verb which marks the manner and attitude. This does not give any respect, but it does not give any disrespect, for at the end the author believes in paranormal. You can see this when looking at the last paragraph. The author states,
"Not long ago, the Society asked the readers of the popular national magazine to send accounts of their psychic experiences. Of 949 replies from every state in the Union, 705 are from women. With few exceptions," says Miss Dale, "the stories which could be verified as truthful apparently came from normal persons leading normal lives."
By stating that this was from normal persons, it shows that people aren't crazy and therefore believable. In the ghost story from 1901, there is respect for the ghost despite the ghost story itself not being believed. There are material verbs being used, which include follow, left, appeared, and vanished. Although this article shows respect towards the ghost, calling it a spirit and departed friend, the author clearly doesn't believe Miss Ella Duffy's experience. The quoting verbs being used by the author, such as claim, according, and declares, show that the author doesn't believe her and that these are meta-propositional verbs. Unlike in Patrice Tell's writer about Italian ghosts, these verbs express and use in a negative light. If the author did in fact believe Miss Ella Duffy, they wouldn't call it a story so many times. The last sentence in this paragraph proves that she doesn't believe her. The author says, While the story is not generally credited, Mrs. Duffy declares that it is the truth, and she says she is confident she will again see it before the end of the week." This using the word story in a certain negative connotation. When looking at more recent cases from the 21st century, the articles dehumanize the ghost, and you can see that in the verbs, there are a lot of material verb processes, which we know as the doing verbs, though the one performing the action is not done by the ghost, but by the living. This takes away from the ghost and makes it more of an object than a being. You can see this happening in the article, Investigating the Paranormal. Are you there, ghost? Shows material and mental preposition verb processes. It also seems to have some existential processes. Existential processes is the process of something existing or happening, where the passive and active voices affect the relationship between the actor and the goal. The quoting verbs asked, ask, and asking, says, said, called, and told, which are all neutral quoting verbs. They also use reply and offer, which are discourse signaling, which is a discourse process. The author also uses yells, which is a descriptive verb participle, which means it marks the attitude in loudness, pitch, or emotion. While this is a well-written story, it is more of a form of entertainment as opposed to an older article where the author believes the ghost. Here it seems like it's making a joke out of the situation. In the article, Lord's Haunting, Fact or Fiction, the author says in a passive voice using existential mental processes such as the verb believe, though when looking at the quoting verbs, she doesn't believe in the ghost and it seems debunking the story. Calling it a story over and over again proves that she does not believe it's true, along with providing proof that it's not. Comparing the verb processes and quoting verbs of the old and recent articles, it shows that the respect and lack of respect that they have for the ghost. Although most of the articles have material verb processes, who's doing the actions change. The old shows that the ghosts are doing the actions, which give them more respect, whereas the actions in the more recent articles are done by the living. This takes away from the respect from the ghost and makes it more of an object than a person.
In this podcast, we answered the question, how does the discourse of ghosts in the past compare with discourse of ghosts in Winona, Minnesota? We found that in the 20th century, the discourse around a paranormal experience was generally respectful. Meanwhile, in the present day, discourse around a paranormal experience is treated and discussed with less respect. Articles from the past discuss paranormal experiences with the presupposition that the experiences are real and that their audiences only need to be convinced that the particular event in question is real, while present-day articles debunk paranormal experiences and presuppose that the audience doesn't believe in the paranormal. When we looked at ghosts as social actors, we discovered that the ghosts used to be more personalized, individualized, and honorifics were used to create respect for the ghosts. In contrast, the ghosts today are impersonalized, collectivized, and objectified in order to remove their humanity and power. When looking at these ghost stories, the way verb processes and quoting verbs analyze the discourse around paranormal experiences. When looking at articles from the past, one can see the subject of paranormal experiences are taken more seriously. In the more recent articles, actions are done not by the ghost, but the living. This takes away respect from the ghost and makes it more of an object than a person. You can see this by looking at the verb processes and quoting verbs. In the past, there was a presupposition that ghosts were individuals that used to be human, but science has changed how ghosts are viewed in the present. Believability has become linked with respect and power, and most people today look at ghosts skeptically. Perceived as being fake or useful only for entertainment, there is no concrete reason to give ghosts individual agency and will.
The study of paranormal discourses is important because it reveals how the dead are treated and thought of in a society. Being able to understand how the paranormal is discussed reflects how much respect is given to the dead and the morals and ideologies of that society as a whole.